Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Lucy Michael and I'm a lecturer in sociology at Ulster University Belfast. I'm delighted to be talking to you today at the invitation of your hosts, and I want to describe to you the racist incident reporting system I'm involved in here in Ireland. The system was established by Ireland, that's the European Network Against Racism in Ireland, in 2013. And I was involved in helping to design the system, which sits online and is available to the public. And I regularly analyse data from that system. So I want to start by telling you a little bit about how we set up iReport.ie and the choices we made in doing that, the kinds of data that come from that system, and the implications for thinking about the safety of international students to make it completely relevant to what you're interested in. iReport.ie sits on a public website and is accessible by anybody. So either the victim or person targeted, or somebody who witnesses an incident, or any other person can report an incident that they've seen or heard about. The idea of the system is that people can report incidents that might not otherwise be reported to police or to other agencies, including, for example, universities. And in some cases, they have already been reported but not followed up. So iReport.ie gives us an idea of the kinds of data that we might not otherwise access. And in fact, it's been enormously useful in Ireland in demonstrating the types and number of cases that have not been reported to police here, or that have been reported and not followed up, or indeed not reported to any other agencies. So since 2013, we have seen the system grow in its use by the public and by member organisations of the ENAR network here in Ireland. And we now have a very well regarded series of 6 monthly reports which present that data in an easy to read format. And I want to show you one of those here. So it's a publication that's made available to the public and is easily read by anybody. I've attached a link below the video here for you to access a copy later on, and also to see the system online for yourself. We made decisions about establishing this system which reflect the aims of ENAR Ireland, but in fact establishing a reporting system is about identifying what are the needs in your area, what are you attempting to achieve, and how likely is it that the public or particular targeted persons are likely to use that system. So the decisions for ENAR Ireland and myself in designing this system were about what kind of system would give us the maximum data, and could we use that data? Would it be good enough quality to use to develop further theory on racism in Ireland and to develop effective policies and recommendations for policy that we could give to police and other agencies. So ENAR Ireland designed that specific system with those purposes in mind. Other civil society systems might use different forms of reporting system. So for example, Tell Mama in the UK, which just collects incidents of anti-Muslim discrimination and hate crime, or the CST Community Security Trust in the UK just collect data about anti-Semitic incidents. Any of these have online forms that allow the targeted person or other persons to give details about that. iReport.ie requires quite a lot of data from those people who report, and the reason for that is that we have relatively little information about racism in Ireland and what it looks like, because police data is so poor, as well as data held at other kinds of institutions. And we can contrast that with the experiences of the United Kingdom, where there's a lot of data about racist incidents and discrimination, and a lot about the institutions that collect those reports, like the police or housing authorities. So in setting up iReport.ie, it was clear to us that we needed to be able to ask about the kinds of places that people might report incidents, and to map what those interventions looked like, and ask how effective they were. And so in the 3-4 years that we've been running iReport.ie, it has been very useful to have that high quality data so that we can address the questions raised around policing, around the support of victims, both by the state and its agencies, and by NGOs and the community sector more widely, and to think about the impact on victims of hate crimes and discrimination. What we have discovered is that the impact even of very small incidents can be severe, and that maps the research that we have previously looked at on the incidence and the impact of international students targeted hate crime. International students very often are assumed to experience only minor forms of discrimination, and yet what we find is a huge number of underreported or unreported incidents, including those of quite severe violence. And very often for international students, the response to that is not to go to state agencies or even to universities, but to leave the country or the course of study, because the biases of the host society are assumed to be shared by state agencies as well as by the perpetrators. In iReport.ie, we have variations in the experience of victims and their responses to hate crimes. Some have left the country and have told us in iReport.ie that they have chosen to do so because of the harassment they were experiencing. A number of people have told us that the harassment they experienced in Ireland was much worse than they had experienced in other countries, not least because the response of An Garda Síochána, our police force, was so poor, as well as that of housing agencies or the local community. So iReport.ie has helped us not only to think about what kind of responses people are getting, but also the impact that those responses have had. So we see there's two levels to the impact that victims suffer. The primary victimization and its impact, which can involve very severe psychological problems, even resulting from regular harassment at home, which the police may not take very seriously, but which, because it happens at home, has real impact on victims. And the secondary victimization, which comes from feeling isolated and alone, and feeling that the whole society is against you and rejects you, rather than simply the perpetrator or their group. So the impact information we've got from iReport.ie has been enormously useful, and I think that's really one of the best things that's come out of this system, that's very often not collected by other kinds of reporting systems that are more concerned with policing or simply capturing the number of crimes. To think then about what interventions might mean, we must ask, who are the agencies who are responsible for addressing hate crime, discrimination, harassment, and whether that's on street or within the university or other institution. Are they trained to respond? Are there policies for those responses? What kinds of interventions are available? And is there good practice being followed in those regards? And finally then, how do the victims perceive those agencies? Do they trust them? What are their experiences of them? And how do they perceive the effectiveness of the interventions undertaken? And that's really key, connecting the dots between what agencies say they're going to do and how victims perceive that as effective for solving the problem that they are facing, both in terms of being unable to go about their business day to day, and also in terms of the stress and psychological harm that it causes them. In thinking specifically about international students, very often we see an assumption on the part of city authorities and on the part of institutions that education is a solution to racism. Now, while that's something that we as racism scholars often say, we more particularly mean anti-racism education. And universities are very often not the sites for anti-racism education. In fact, with a highly educated student body, very often we see that it's very easy for racist ideas to take hold and for racist behaviours to become widespread and mimicked. When those are copied from the wider society, from politicians, policymakers, the media, then even the most educated can produce and reproduce very high levels of victimization of minority students. So international students may not have been a minority in their own country. They may be experiencing that for the very first time. They then are poorly equipped to understand what to do when they experience harassment. So as well as the culture shock that they're experiencing on arrival, and even perhaps late into their stay, they will not have a good understanding of the kinds of reporting systems available. There are 4 key elements in establishing a reporting system for addressing hate crime or discrimination. The first is expertise. What expertise do you have on board to deal with racism? Do you have the knowledge to understand the implications of hate crimes or discrimination and the available interventions? 2, what are the interventions available either at the institutional level or at the state level or local level? Is it possible, for example, to work with housing authorities where student accommodation is involved, with local police when something happens in the city centre or neighbourhood, and with local administrators within the university institution if something happens on campus? A large percentage of incidents that happen to international students in fact happen on campus and its environs, and so it's essential that you have robust internal procedures to deal with that, particularly with the perpetrators or students as well as the victims. The third thing is trust. Will those people who are students or staff trust that the information they submit to this system will be properly used and that their data will be protected? A key concern for victims targeted in hate crimes and discrimination is retaliation or vengeance on the part of the perpetrators. Further, if this reporting system is established within a specific institution, the student may be concerned about their academic standing, and given that international students' prime purpose for being in the country is to achieve a better level of academic standing, this is the most serious concern for them. Finally, what connection or relationships are there with police or other authorities? Can you establish good data sharing protocols to make sure that information is passed appropriately? Data can be passed without endangering the victim's data, and also that if you're encouraging students to support or staff to support, report to police or other agencies, that there are support mechanisms in place for that in their home institution to make sure that reporting isn't a one-off, and to make sure that the person experiences the lowest level of impact that they can after the incident. If I were to add a 5th element for a successful reporting system, it's this: publicity. Unless people know about your system, understand how it works, and the consequences of reporting to it, they won't engage with it. So publicity is your best friend in this regard. Work out what kind of system you're promoting, who you're promoting it to, and how to respond to questions raised by members of your targeted public. Without the publicity, the system simply won't work. Best of luck with finding solutions to addressing the problems faced by international students in Lublin. I'm sorry I can't be with you there again, but I wish you the very best with your endeavours.